And so I hit the horns for like 5 seconds and I blew a grunt and it got his attention. So then I roared right at him and he come and he got to 100 yards and there's this little ravine crossing and he crossed right there. And I guess I was just kind of looking for a challenge, and I'd always had permission for this neighboring property, but I'd never really hunted it to the full extent. And I'm like, well, maybe it is a buck. So I turned and I roared right at it like I'd done on Monday night. And that crunching in the leaves just gets louder and louder and louder.
I got a 2-for-1 for you tonight, folks. I'm all about value, okay? We're all about value here at Antlers and Hicks. And tonight I got 2 stories in one podcast. Travis C., Central Iowa. Let me tell you something. He killed a great deer last deer season. Deer scored in like the 190s. Come in this year, got another one, just shy of 170. You're going to hear both stories. Great guy, great dad, outstanding hunter. Something you're going to love. Let's head out to the Hawkeye State. Go check out with Travis C. Well, we got a good one here tonight. I know I say that every week, Travis. I say it every week. We got a good one tonight, and we do. We really do. A good story from Travis C. from Central Iowa. He's here with his daughter Sawyer. How you guys doing?
Doing good.
Good. Well, look, Travis, you and I talked briefly the other day about this deer that you killed. And man, I was really, really impressed with the deer and all that. And then we got to making some back talk because you really have a unique way of that you approach deer hunting. And that's something I want to talk about tonight. That's something we really hadn't broken down a lot in this podcast is different styles of approaching a trophy animal. So what I want to do right now is just give us a quick background on you. A little history on you as a hunter. How'd you get started in hunting?
So, with shotgun hunting for whitetails with my dad and his buddies and my older brothers. And then as time went on, my brother, who's very well known in the hunting industry, Billy is his name, he's had his own channel, Whitetail or Wildest Dreams TV, and he's now with Whitetail Freaks. But Billy got into bow hunting and had some quick success, and then I decided I wanted to try bow hunting, so he kind of helped me out. And man, I did it wrong for so long, and he would try to tell me how to do it. And I guess I'm just hard-headed, and it took a while for me to figure out my style and his style are not necessarily the same, but there were things to learn from him. So I got into the bow hunting and we got away from the shotgun hunting. I love pheasant hunting and turkey hunting too. But there's just something about bow hunting. The more I did it and the closer I could get to those animals, the more my adrenaline just pumped, where it was, when you got the shotgun and they're running through the timber and you're doing the deer drives, it's like, man, if you can get a shot at one, you're excited, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you get into the bow hunting and you calm yourself down and you actually start paying attention to that animal, there's just something about that it is an addiction that runs through your blood. And when you figure it out, it's hard to ever go back to another style of hunting.
It definitely is, man. It definitely, when you can, I don't know if you're like me, but it's almost, chancy but when I come to full draw, when I kind of break that back wall, it's over, baby. It's over.
Yeah.
I mean, but leading up until that, man, I'm always nervous as a cat.
Yeah, no, my brother and I, we don't do it as much now that I got one little girl, he's got 3. We don't target shoot as much as we used to, but when we used to target shoot, man, we would see who could hold their bow at full draw the longest.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's some of the best preparation and some of the best practice because, when you're in your stand and you got your shooting lanes, if you can kind of predict where that deer is going to go, and we'll get into that with my big one that got your attention, but if you can kind of predict where he's going to go, you get the chance to get it full draw, you better be ready to hold that thing for a minute and a half, 2 minutes, even 3 if necessary, because when that shot comes, you don't want to miss that chance.
No, not at all. And I think that is some great training. I've got a friend of mine that has a bow shop out in Texas, and he just did they just did clip, a few clips of some Hoyt, some Matthews, and I think maybe PSE is coming, of the new bows that they've got coming out. And one thing that he said about the new bows, the back wall that they have these days, the newer ones, he said it's unbelievable. That you just come to full draw and just hold it forever.
Cams, dude, I shoot an elite, but yeah, you pull back and those cams lock in, and I shoot an elite that's 70 pounds is all the more I do, which for some people 70 pounds is a lot, but I hold that thing and I'll hold it for 2.5, 3 minutes just to be ready. And then whether I'm turkey hunting or deer hunting, when it comes time to go to full draw, man, it's just reflex, and I just hold right there.
Yeah, because if you can hold it and predict and let the deer walk into the opening versus wait till it almost gets to the opening, that's a whole different game right there. That increases your odds significantly.
Exactly. It's like a mousetrap.
That's right. That's right. So look, we got a lot of ground to cover. Let's get started on this deer that you killed this year.
Yeah.
You and I briefly talked. I don't like to hear the full story. I don't know if a lot of podcasters are like this. I don't want to hear the full story before I get started, mainly because I want to have just like general reactionary questions. So this is the first time I've heard this. So lay it on me, Cat. Let me have it. What happened?
Yeah, so last year I shot a really nice buck, and I know we're going to talk about that one. So going into this year, we try to manage our family property to the best of our ability these days. And I guess I was just kind of looking for a challenge, and I'd always had permission for this neighboring property, but I'd never really hunted it to the full extent. And so I called up the guy and I said, "Hey, I just want to make sure I still had permission to go on your land." And he said, "Yeah, there might be a couple others going out there." So I tracked out who the others might be. I tried to, form a relationship with them. One of them, we had a really good conversation. He said he was going to be hunting from out of state. And he mainly liked to sit on that property in the mornings. So I said, "No problem, man. When you come in and you're going to hunt, you just let me know. It's all yours. You do what you got to do. But when you go back home and I get to hunt it, I'm going to hunt it to the best of my ability." And so, to make a long story short, I kind of already knew this property, but I wasn't running trail cameras on it, and I didn't really find much for good sheds on it this past spring. I went out, I set my stands, I set my cameras, I pulled my cameras the first pole, and I saw one pretty decent 10-pointer on there. And so I was like, all right, well, there's something. And I noticed that the neighbor to the north, the corn was still very well standing in that field. I thought, whatever's big running around here is probably going to be living in that corn for a while. So I'm not going to get overly excited on this property until that corn gets picked. So I'm paying attention to the farmer and what's going on there. It's a pretty big field, and I noticed that they're moving their combines and their tractors. I know that they're going to be picking that field in the next few days. So I went and sat in my stand. I think it was my third sit of the year, and I'm sitting there watching the sun go down, and I see pretty decent 8-point and a really small little scraggly 4-corn. And I'm like, all right, we got something going on tonight.
Yeah.
And I no more than have that thought, and I kind of see this wave coming up out of the corn, and I'm like, oh man, what is that? So I pull up my binoculars, and he comes out of the cornfield, and he's quite a ways away. I'm looking at him, I'm like, man, that looks almost identical to the buck I shot last year. And I'm counting, I'm like, he's a 6x6 and he's really wide. And I'm like, what are the chances of this? So I texted my brother and I just said, man, you're not going to believe this, but I just saw a buck that could be last year's ghost. And my computer's falling down. And so anyway, I'm like, man, it could be last year's ghost. And he goes, well, did you call at him? I said, no, it's too early to be doing any calling. And he goes, well, just blow a grunt at him, just rattle, just see what he does. And so I hit the horns for like 5 seconds and I blew a grunt and it got his attention. So then I roared right at him and he got to 100 yards and there's this little ravine crossing and he crossed right there and I never saw him again the rest of that night. And so as the sun goes down, I'm sitting there thinking, I don't like this spot. I feel like I need to be over there. I sit the next night in my other stand because I don't like to overpressure stands. I don't pay as much attention to wind, and I know a lot of guys are probably going to laugh when they hear that, but I don't. I don't pay as much attention to the wind as much as I pay attention to the pressure I'm putting on a location.
Okay.
So I went and I sat on the south side of that property on the next night. Didn't really see anything. Like I said, I'm keeping track of everything. The farmer is cleaning out that field. And I'm like, Wednesday night should be good. Wednesday night, I'm sitting there for 10 minutes. And I'm like, this just does not feel right. My gut instinct tells me this ain't right. I'm done. I'm moving. I tore everything down. I hustled about 150 yards. Rehung my stand, got up there, realized I didn't like the shooting lanes, tore it all down again, moved 2 trees over, hung it back up again, and right as the combines are coming into the what would be considered the bottom field, because the neighboring property split up, right as they're coming in, I settle down into my seat. And I'm like, all right, this should be good. We'll see what happens. Combines pick the whole cornfield. Nothing comes out. Nothing comes my way. I start seeing deer filter from a far distance, though, into that cut cornfield. I don't have my binoculars, but I'm like, something out there's got to be good. So I rattle the horns, blow the grunt tube. 10 minutes goes by, and I start hearing some leaves, like over my shoulder. I'm like, man, that's a buck making a scrape or something. So I kind of blew a little grunt at it. And the same sound keeps going on in the same spot. I mean, I got it pinpointed. I finally give up on it being a buck. I'm thinking it's squirrels just kind of messing around with one another, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting there watching those deer, and I'm just like, man, something's eventually going to come my way. It's about 30, 40 minutes until last light, and I start hearing the scratching in the leaves again. And I'm like, well, maybe it is a buck. So I turned and I roared right at it like I done on Monday night. And that crunching in the leaves just gets louder and louder and louder. And I'm like, all right, it's a buck and he wants to fight. And I look on the bottom of these cedar trees and I see legs. And so I look up to where I think I'm going to see a head. And I just see a fence row of tines step out at 35 yards.
What did you think when you saw that?
What's that?
What did you think when you saw that? I mean, that's what you was hearing, wasn't it, that deer?
When I saw it, I just, in my head, I just went, that's him. That's the buck from Monday night. That's that big one that reminds me of the one I shot the year before. And then my second thought is, I got to get ready.
Right.
You know, I'm like, I grab, I'm like, oh boy, So to my benefit, there is a small little tree between him and me that's about 20, 25 foot tall. And as he rounded that tree, I came to full draw, and there's a scrape below that tree. And so I'm at full draw, and he walks right up to that scrape. Well, when I hung that stand, every time I hang a stand, I take a couple landmark, ranges with my finder.
Mm-hmm.
That scrape was 23 yards when I took that landmark range. He's standing right on it, man. I put my 25-yard pin just a couple inches low, and I let him have it. My chickens are going to say hi to you.
I love it. We got first time I've ever had chickens on the podcast. That's awesome.
They're walking around. Anyway, so drilled him at 23 yards. Text my brother, like I said, him and my dad are my best hunting companions other than my daughter. Text my brother, I'm like, dude, I just hammered him. He's like, the big one? I'm like, yep, he's done, man. I said, but it wasn't a complete pass through, so I'm gonna need some help tracking him. Grab your flashlight and meet me in about an hour. I want to give him just a little bit of time. So he meets me, we go, and we start tracking, man. And no joke, the deer I shot in 2022 went 75 yards at a 25-yard shot on the left side. This deer went 70 yards on a 23-yard shot on the left side.
Wow.
And
Coincidental.
they're both 6x6s.
I'm telling you, dude, both deer, I'm telling you, both deer are jaw dropping to me. They're great. They've got beautiful characteristics, big deer, just outstanding. So he ran that far. So did you hit him where did you end up hitting him at?
The one from this year?
Yeah, the one from this year.
So I ended up getting back of both lungs and liver on this one.
Okay. Hey, another thing. Let me ask you this. How long did it take you all that rearranging? How long did that take?
Well, I mean, not to be too conceited, but I'm pretty agile. I'm in pretty good shape.
Right.
I tore down and set back up and moved 150, 160 yards in about 45 minutes.
That's not bad. Yeah, that's really good. That's really because when you were talking about taking down, putting up, taking down, I'm thinking, my goodness, this is going to take a better part of an hour. He's sitting here trying to take it. But if you just did it in 45 minutes, you far exceeded what I was expecting.
No, and the crazy thing is, you see my daughter kind of popping in and out of the camera frame.
Yeah.
She was with her mother that night, and when I got up in that stand, I looked at my phone. So a few years back, I actually fell out of a tree stand, and my safety harness caught me. But when it caught me, it turned me, and my face went right into the trunk of that tree. I broke my eye socket, my cheekbone, my jaw, and totally smashed my septum into multiple pieces. Had to
Good lands
to reconstruct it. But so I always make sure I have good battery on my cell phone when I go sit.
Yeah.
Get up in this new stand, I look, and I got a missed call from my daughter, and I got combines in the field just to my north. And so I'm like, I got time. So I called her up. I'm like, hey, honey, how was school today? And she's like, good. Why are you whispering? And I go, well, I'm out hunting. And she goes, oh, well, good luck then. I'll leave you alone. So, I mean, I even had time to get a little phone call into my daughter,
Yeah.
And that's not bragging or anything. That's just, I knew I wanted to be in that stand super, super early because I knew that they would be picking that corn that night and something good was going to happen. I did not know that buck was going to come from the south rather than come from the north.
Yeah.
I had no clue he was to the south of me. And to be making a scrape, dude, he made a scrape for 25, 30 minutes, made a scrape not 60 yards away from me. I just couldn't see him because of the cedar trees.
Right. Hey, I tell you, man, I've scored deer for Buckmasters since 2012. I hear some of the dadgum stories you ever want to hear. And I'm bound and determined when it's your time to kill a deer, it's just your time to kill that deer. I mean, there's nothing that's going to get in the way of it. There's nothing that's going to stand in the way. It's your time. And with you and this deer, it was obviously your time to kill a deer with the rearranging, the combines, being able to take a telephone call, deer coming from a way you were not expecting.
Yeah,
This was just your deer to have, brother.
yeah. No, and that's like I said, I didn't have no history with him. Uh, I knew the property fairly well, and I guess the only history I really had with him was I had seen him last year during shotgun season because I sat that property late season last year, so I had seen him a year ago, but I never found his sheds and I never had him on trail camera.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I tell
So
you, man. Hey, what kind of broadhead you shoot him with?
I shoot the Muzzy TB or HI What it's the Muzzy that it's the mechanical, but it's the fixed at the same time. It's
Yeah, I
got the
can't remember the name of it. Yeah, I know what you're
actually.
talking about.
Give me 1 second.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry, you've been how you was gonna catch them chickens? Yeah. Well, I tell you what. How many chickens do you have? Okay.
This is the broadhead I shoot.
Okay, I got you. Okay, that's a good size broadhead. What cut is that on it when it's opened up like that?
2 5/8.
That's a big
And so
head.
I'm shooting this one because it's got all four sides to it. So when
Yeah.
it goes through, I mean, it does some damage.
Right. Right. So that deer ended up scoring what this deer this year? One just shy of 170.
Yeah, 167 and some change. Depend. I mean, you're an official scorer for Buckmasters, so I've researched that stuff to the best of my ability. I've got one of those flex tapes, so when I taped him out, I came up with 167 the first time. The second time, I came up with 166 and 7/8. So
Yeah, you're probably in the ballpark. It doesn't look like a hard score at all. Pretty typical points. Shouldn't be bad at all. So yeah, I fully believe that's going to be pretty well close after seeing the pictures for sure.
yeah, he had close to a 23-inch inside spread.
Yeah, I noticed that the spread was crazy. Do you remember how
Yep.
long the main beams were?
What's that?
The main beams. You remember how long they were?
24 on one side and 24 and a half on the other side.
Yeah, when you get long main beams like that, man, that's where your scores really get good. When you can get over that
They,
24-inch mark.
the main thing that buck was missing was he didn't have much of anything at all. And I sent you the picture of him. He didn't have much of anything at all for brow tines.
Yeah, yeah.
But otherwise, I mean, beautiful, beautiful deer. I'm super happy with him.
Hey, let me ask you something about when you fell out of a tree. What kind of stand are you hunting out of now?
Now I use the Hawk, the hang and hunt backpack system.
Uh-huh.
So I use the helium, the lightweight uh, steps, and then I ratchet it. Not only do I use the strap that comes with the tree stand, but I use at least one, if not two more ratchets to really make sure that thing is good. The one I
Mm-hmm.
fell out of was a API Outdoors climber stand.
Right, right. You remember
Well,
what kind of harness?
I'll
What
never
kind?
get in a climber stand again after falling out of one and breaking my face. I mean, I bled like a stuck hog, and by all means, had I not had, it's crazy how your mind reminds you of things and how things can stick. Like, I mean, I can play it over and over again in my head. I fell, I hit, I looked down, and I just saw blood pouring out of my face. And I reached into my pocket and I looked at my phone. I had 7% battery left. I called
Golly.
and I said, Dad, I just fell out of a tree stand. He said, You're lying. You shot a big buck. And I said, No, I'm not lying. I'm hanging from the tree. Get here. Help me now. He said, Where are you? I told him where I was. I was on the edge of one of our farm fields. And it wasn't five, maybe 10 minutes later, I could hear the diesel engine of his truck barreling down the road. And then I looked up and I could see him just hauling across the field to come. And then he got there and he parked in the corner where I told him I was. And he goes, Where are you? I can't see you. I'm in full camo. And I'm like, right here, like I was losing it.
Yeah, I
And
bet so, man.
he rushed me to the hospital. They got me all bandaged up, stitched up, whatnot. And I went and had x-rays taken. They're like, well, we're not going to do a plate because the fractures to the jaw, the eye socket, and the cheek aren't really that bad. But we got to make an incision and we got to go up and straighten out the nose because, like I said, my septum was just smashed into it. I mean, it was
Wow. Goodness. How long ago was that?
that was when right before she was born. That was 2014. So coming up
Okay.
on 10 years ago.
Man, no, that's something you ain't never gonna forget, man. Good lands.
And so I always tell people like I'll never get in a climber stand again. I don't care what brand it is. I used my brother's mud. My brother had a muddy hanging hunt. I used that one time and I fell in love. I was like, I want one of these. I need one of these that I can throw on my back. It's got the steps. I can put my ratchets in my little pouch. Like I love this thing. So I ended up buying the Hawk one though. No difference. I mean, they're the same brand, but
Right.
I bought the Hawk one mainly so that we would know the difference between his and mine.
Yeah.
And yeah, I love it. I love that thing.
That's cool. Look, so we got a little time. Let's
Yeah.
give me the Cliff's Notes on that deer last year.
So everybody loves shed antlers. Excuse me. So here's his shed
Golly.
from last year.
Uh.
And
Now is this
to
now is
find the
this
yep.
this is the deer from this year or last year?
No, this is these are the deer I shot last year's 2021 sheds.
Gotcha. Okay.
So to find these and wonder, is this him in his prime or not, knowing he's 5 years old, you wouldn't think it, but the dude put on. And you saw it in the pictures, in the Field and
Shoot
Stream
yeah.
article. He put on his, on every single point he put on his width and his brow tines, and then these little dagger points at the bases. Dude, everything got bigger into 2022.
My stars, that dude is huge, cuz.
So right here, he's probably in the 180s. And like you said, like you already know, I shot him in the 190s.
Yeah. And the 190s. Golly. That is crazy, man. So
But
how
so,
did that so tell everybody
so
how that one went down.
Stream published it, but they only covered a little of it. Man, you talk about everything that could go wrong went wrong with that deer, but everything that could go right also went right with that deer. I mean, that was an example of neighbors finding out, people trying to get as close as they can to your property, trail cameras getting shared around the community, shed antlers, you only shot it because of your daddy. Is that a pen raised deer? Everything, but what went right with it was that deer showed up on my brother's trail camera in 2019, and we didn't think much of him. He was just a 3-year old or whatever. In 2020, he showed up on my trail camera, but he had broken off his G2 and a G4 before season even opened. And so he's on my trail camera in September with 2 broken tines. I'm like, man, either old boy likes to fight or something happened to him. But either way, that is a magnificent deer with 2 broken tines. So I made up my mind right then. I'm not going to shoot him this year.
Right.
Even if I shot, I'm not shooting him. I want him with a perfect rack. So he came back in 2021 with this rack. And then it was like, okay, what do we got to do now? Well, I wasn't bow hunting that property in 2020 or 2021. That was just where my dad and I gun hunted.
Mm-hmm.
We did a little land swap trade around deal, and the land where I was bow hunting, we sold, and we negotiated for lifetime hunting rights on the property. Well, at the very last minute, the people who bought it said, you know what, we're not okay with this lifetime hunting stuff, so we want to renegotiate and kind of do something different. So my dad and I had a talk, and he's like, look, I'll let you hang a tree stand. You know, you keep doing what you're doing around the farm, helping with fence rows and trees and mowing yards and mechanical work on machinery. You just keep doing what you're doing, and I'll let you hunt what we consider kind of the sanctuary. But you gotta hunt it right. You know, don't overpressure it or none of that stuff. And so anyway, long story short, I'm like, all right. So I hung a stand, and in 2021, and I just didn't know anything about where his home range was because I only had 2 cameras on that property. And you talk about getting back to the basics of why we hunt. I had my best friend's wedding coming up at the end of November. I had put off just a couple nights with her where I would say, hey, do you want to go with Grandpa? You want to go with Grandma? Daddy's going to go sit in a tree stand. And I'm sitting there one night. I got to leave for this wedding out in Colorado in a couple days. And I know it's going to get cold and start snowing when we get back from Colorado. And this 9-pointer, nothing special. Well, I guess depends on where you're from. But
Yeah.
So disrespect to anyone listening down south or nothing like that. But, you know, this like 125, 130 inch 9-pointer comes out. I'd made a little rattle, and the dude closed 250 yards on me. From that, it looked huge. He come in 25 yards broadside, and my mind was made up. I said, you know what? I put off time with my little girl. I put off time with some friends. I got this trip coming up. This is why we hunt. Like this excitement of calling a deer in, even knowing he was still out there. I was like, no, I'm going to take this one, fill my tag, and I'm done. I'm done fighting the frustration and the agony. So I tagged that little 9-pointer and went on with the year. Spring rolls around. I go out shed hunting, and this is the only deer that I want to find. And I found his left side after probably 3 or 4 shed hunts and 9 or 10 miles. I finally located his left side. About a month later, my dad is planting soybeans, and he looks out the tractor cab window, and the right side is laying in the field.
Oh, heck.
So we matched him up, and then we looked on the map at where the right side was, where the left side was, and then we went back, and we looked at 2019, 2020, 2021, all of it. What do we got for trail camera pictures? What do we got for time frames? And my brother and I started mapping it out. And I'm like, dude, I'm all in. In 2022, I am all in on that buck. Like, that's the one. That's what I want. So I hung a couple of trail cameras strategically. And it was almost like he knew I was after him. Because every time I went and did a card pull, I had 7 trail cameras hung for this deer. Well, any deer really, but I wanted to get him patterned out. Anytime I went and did a card pull, I always do like a jumping jack when I set my trail cameras just to make sure that they're ignited, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I would pull up a card and I would see my jumping jack picture, and he would be on 1, if not 2, of the 7 trail cameras as the next image after me.
Really?
It was like he wanted to just mess with me and be like, hey, you set that trail camera, and then I came over here. And I'm like, man, this ain't cool, you know? So I hung my stands on what I thought was his normal travel route, but I wasn't seeing him. And then, like I said, man, people start talking around the community, and it's a competitive sport. And I want to hit on that next. But, yeah, man, it's just one of those things where I talk to my dad. I'm like, man, people are starting to talk about this buck. He's showing up on other people's trail cameras. And Dad goes, you go full force wherever, like, because he he prefers that we kind of hunt the edges, which I agree with. I think that's a smart idea to hunt the edges of a property. But he's like, if you're not seeing him in any of your stands, like you aren't even seeing him on the hoof, but you're hanging your stands by your cameras, something's going on. He's like, where do you want to be? And I kind of told him, and he's like, then you go hang a stand there. So I went in and I had to hike dang close to 3/4 of a mile, maybe even a whole mile, to go way out and around bedding areas and feeding areas. I had to go way out and around to get up to this one little area where I wanted to be. I mean, totally circle them. Because if I parked where a normal person would park, it would only be like a 300-yard hike.
Yeah.
But I took the long way around. I got up in there, and the day I killed him, it was about 20, 25 degrees outside, 20-mile-an-hour winds, spitting snow. I sat all morning until I could barely, like I did. We go back to talking about, pulling your bow back. I had a couple deer walk by and I was like, man, if one of those would have been him, could I have even drawn my bow back? Like, I'm so cold. And I tried to draw my bow back and I couldn't. I was froze to the bone. So I got down out of the stand, went and had breakfast, warmed up a little bit. And my brother was going to be going to Southern Iowa. My dad had plans for the evening. I was like, all right, well, I'm getting out there. I got out there. It's still probably 10, 15-mile-an-hour winds, just below 30 degrees, kind of cold. I sat there for about an hour, hour and a half, and I see these 5 does kind of coming from north of me. And I noticed something's pressuring them because they're not traveling nice and slow. Like they got some get up in their step. And I looked through my binoculars at where they had come from, and I just saw, I mean, it looked like a combine head coming through the forest. And it only took one look, and I'm like, that's him. That is the deer that has eluded me for almost 3 years now, and numerous hunts and numerous shed hikes and numerous trail camera pulls and like all of this that has gone into it. That's him. And, I guess that's at that moment last year, that's when I realized that I was no longer a little boy sitting with my dad shotgun hunting. I was actually had grown into be a real mature hunter because as soon as I realized it was the buck that I'd been wanting, I quit paying attention to his rack and I started paying attention to my shot.
Mm-hmm.
I looked and I saw he's either going to go behind me. If he goes behind me, I got a 30-yard shot through a shooting lane. If he goes in front of me, I got this open kind of flooded area, this little marsh pit in the middle of our timber. And if he goes there, I'm either going to have him at 10 yards or 45 yards. But either way, he's either going behind or in front. So which way is he going to go? He committed to going in front of me. And through that marsh, there's a skirt trail on one side, a skirt trail on the other side, and then there's a trail that cuts straight through the middle. And so knowing he was going in front of me, I just went ahead and drew my bow back. I got locked in, ready, and he cleared 2 trees, and he decided to take the middle route. And the middle route was 27 yards. So I put my 25-yard pin just a little bit high, and he walked up behind a doe to give her a little sniff. And when he stopped, I don't think he even lip curled. I let him have it.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. And it was a left side shot.
Left side shot. He turned. He ran straight north of me. And I'm watching through binoculars. And I thought I saw him tip over, but our property kind of has some gentle hills. I didn't know if maybe he went down over a hill or what. But I knew I hit him good. And I knew I had Luminox in. So I gave him 30, 40 minutes, got down. I'm like, all right, I'm going to find either blood or arrow, because I use those flashing Luminox.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, I'm either going to find blood or I'm going to see my arrow before I go any further. Like, I don't want to pressure him. I saw that first little bit of blood, and man, it was fire engine red. I'm stoked at this point. I find another little drop, and I find another little drop, and then I find a big, pretty decent sized pool of it, and I'm like, oh, he's gonna be dead, you know. Another couple steps, two pools, look up ahead, and I see my Luminoc flashing. I don't realize it, but it's still sticking out of his side. So I just kind of started walking nice and easy towards my Luminoc, thinking it's hung up in some brush or something. Well, he had ran, and apparently he kind of lost his balance, and he fell in between two thorn trees where I couldn't see his rack sticking up. I could just see that Luminoc arrow sticking out of its side. And I mean, it goes slow when you replay it in your mind, but in the grand scheme of things, it probably took me 5, 6 minutes to locate that deer from where he fell, or from where my stand was to where he fell. It was about 75 yards.
Yeah, good feeling, wasn't it?
Oh man, I walked up on him, and I'm shaking. I got this huge smile on my face, and like a little kid in a candy store or somebody that just met their favorite celebrity, I pulled out my cell phone. I took a selfie with it. I sent the selfie to my brother. I didn't say no caption. I just sent the selfie to my brother, and my brother's like, "No way, you got him!" I'm like, "I got him. He is down." And I sent it to my dad too, and my dad's like, what am I looking at? I'm like, he's dead. He's like, who's dead? I'm like, the one. He's like, oh no way. I'm like, yeah, I got him. My dad's like, all right, well, do you need help? You like, how far into the timber are you? Can you get him gutted out? Like, I'll cancel my plans. I'll head home right now. I was like, no, I'm good. I'm good. I'll handle it. And I kind of wanted it that way too, as much as it would have been fun to have them there in the timber to celebrate with, because I had built such a connection with pursuing that buck to clean him, to clean him out of the timber and get him loaded in the truck, get him home. And before I hung him up in the rafters, I took the picture that you saw of him laying on my tailgate, and you
Mm-hmm.
see him laying on that tailgate, and you can see waves of how thick that deer's body was.
Yeah.
And to do all of that, all of the hard part on my own, it was very humbling. It was
Yeah.
like, you know what? This is the work I put in. I put that work in all the way through to the very end of everything. Even the butchering. I cooked, I cleaned him out, I butchered him, I turned him into jerky and some hamburger and some loins. I did it all, and the reward a guy feels when they do it that way, you can't put money on that.
That's right. 100% agreed, brother. 100% agreed. Now, you said something about being competitive. Isn't it crazy how, I say this all the time. There's three things in the world that'll bring out the worst in folks. That's politics, money, and big deer. And man, I'm telling you, folks they'll go crazy over a big deer. Is that what happened with that big one?
Dude, my brother said that too. My brother is like, man, and because like I said, I know I keep referencing him. I wish he was here because he's he's a heck of a bow hunter, just heck of a whitetail hunter in general. And like I said, he's very well known around the hunting community. He's videoed for some of the bigger names. I don't want to necessarily name drop him, but he is on Midwest Whitetail. Did some stuff with the Druries, and then he's done some stuff with Arctic Shield and Real Tree and just whoever else. But man, he said that to me a couple of years ago. He's like, big deer will make people do stupid things, like
Mm-hmm.
absolute. With You would never do it on a big fat doe, but you put a set of
No.
antlers on a buck, and suddenly you got guys that are willing to risk it all. I mean, and this might go down a whole nother road, but felony charges, man, spotlights and running
Yeah.
them down trucks and using rifles during bow season. I mean, what a big deer will make a guy do is just asinine.
I
And
was
it
thinking
is.
that exact word. That's the exact word that I was thinking.
Yeah. And what's funny about the word asinine is it's kind of like assassin, in the way that they're spelled. And that's
Yeah,
the thing that I don't ever want to be known as a hunter. I don't ever want to be known as an assassin or a murderer or, a killer or anything. I'm a hunter. I'm out there pursuing a wild animal that has as much of a fair chance, if not a better chance, at surviving our interaction than I have a chance at harvesting that animal,
that's right. Yep.
And
Yep.
so I don't bait deer. I don't hang my tree stands right on property lines. I'll never knock an arrow and draw back my bow after hours or before hours. I don't do none of that stuff. I play as fair and honest by the rules as possible because I really feel that you get what you earn in life. And if you want to cut corners and you want to do it the cheapskate way, eventually karma will catch up with you.
It will get you. That's right. That's exactly right.
My 194, 195, whatever he was, that I shot last year, I actually saw my original post from that on my Facebook memories just the other day. And I listened to some of your podcasts. I told you that when you called me. I said, man,
Yeah.
I said, I don't normally do stuff like this, but I looked into you and you seem like my kind of guy. You're a daddy's girl. I love that post of yours, by the way.
Well,
You
thank
and
you.
your girl went hunting and then you went to her National Honor Society program there at the school. And I'm like, man, this dude has my respect just off that one post alone. But then I looked into listened to some of your podcasts, saw some of your YouTube stuff, did some homework on you, and you're a quotes guy. You seem to really like quotes.
Yeah, I do. I really do.
I posted a quote with that buck last year, and the quote goes, slow success builds character. Fast success builds ego.
Ooh, I like that, dude.
Slow success builds character. Fast success builds ego. And a few years back, 10, 15 years ago, back when all of this hunting stuff was getting on DVDs and YouTube and all that stuff, I don't know if it's true or not, and I can't even remember who the professional hunter was, but I heard that they were like willing to pay if you could pattern down a deer so that they could come to Iowa and kill it within 5 days. They would pay like $20,000 to come hunt your property.
Ooh.
But you had to pattern it down. You had to have stands ready for them, and they're going to draw an Iowa tag. They're going to fly into Iowa. They got 5 days to hunt. They're going to, video it all up. But they want to know like 99% guarantee that they can kill this deer. And then as soon as they kill the deer, what are they going to do? They're going to ship the head to a taxidermist, send the meat to a butcher, probably to get donated, hop on an airplane or jump in their truck, and they're going to head off to the next hunting location in the next state. And I just never really got where people are satisfied hunting that way. And if anyone's listening and they're offended by that, I do apologize greatly. But I just feel that the satisfaction of really enjoying the outdoors, getting to know a property, and if you can't get to know your own property, a public property, or maybe there's someone in your neighborhood, someone around where, you do some door knocking or some relationship building, and you really, over time, you get to know the property. You get to understand the deer. You find the sheds, you set the cameras, you do some stuff wrong, you shoot a couple does, and eventually that day comes where a pretty decent buck walks into your life, and you're like, this is my deer. This is my chance. This is what I have sat in the stand, put in the hours, done all the work for. And the rewarding feeling you get from doing it that way, I don't feel can be matched. And so, yeah, to talk about it being a competitive sport, man, people find out that you got a big deer on your trail camera and they don't come to you and say, hey, man, I just thought maybe I could offer to help you out, or I wanted to let you know I'm hunting not too far away. I got that same deer on camera. No, it's almost like people will plot to try to figure out how they can beat you to the punch, how
Yeah.
close they can hang their stand. And I took a buddy of mine out one year, and he noticed a tree stand on the neighbor's property, and he's like, "Is that one of your stands?" I said, "No." And I looked up at it and I said, "But it might as well be." This stand was like 10, 15 yards over the fence facing into our property.
Mm.
Not even, I'm not even putting your back to our, you're looking right in. And it's like, really?
Yeah.
You know, you're basically either waiting for them to jump the fence or you're planning on shooting straight down, but you're not hunting the property you got permission for. You're hunting the property on the other side of the fence at that point. So going back, that's like I said, man, I don't even hang tree stands on our own fence line. 99% of the time, my tree stands are hung where if I saw a deer on a neighboring property, I could not take a clean shot at it.
Yeah. And that's ethical, man. That's how it's supposed to be. That's how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, dude. Well, we bumping up on 50 minutes.
Yeah. So originally we said it was only going to be 30, but man, I feel like I could sit and talk with you all night, man.
I know, dude.
I do. By trade, I'm a realtor and an auctioneer, family farmer. And I know I told you the name of my company the other day. So it's Live, Farm, Hunt, Real Estate, and Land Services. And I came up with that name. My business was starting to build, and I was sitting with a friend of mine, and I said, "Man, I just want to help people find places to live, farm, and hunt." And he said, "Why don't you just call it that then?" I said, "Call it what?" He said, "Just call it Live, Farm, Hunt." And so the philosophy is this: living isn't just in a house. That's pushing your kids on the swing. That's going out to get ice cream. Like, you got to live life, right?
That's right.
And farming, for us, that's the crops, that's the hay, that's the cattle. But maybe farming in your own life is just doing the work to maintain your life. And then the hunt comes last. You know, that's the way we do things around here. Live, farm, hunt.
Sounds like a great line of priorities, brother.
Yeah, I'm going to get you a shirt and a hat. If you can come up to Iowa in the spring for the Deer Classic, I'd love to have you come up and check out our booth and spend some time at the Iowa Deer Classic. I think you'd really get a lot out of it and enjoy it. It's been a pleasure being on your podcast. And if you ever want me back as a guest, I mean, I got a couple more of these guys we could talk about.
Heck yeah, man. I may have to do that. And I may have to make it up to that classic. I got a buddy of mine that he goes up there and scores up there. So I may get in touch with him and see if he needs somebody to give him a hand. I may see if I can make it up there.
Sure. One last plug on the deer. I told you about this one right here in the middle. If you ever get the chance and you really want to challenge yourself, and this isn't just for you, this is for your listeners too. That's about 140 something inch 10 point that her and we just went out turkey hunting, and we were watching the sun go down sitting on a log behind a little old rose bush. And that dude came out at about 90 yards, and I took a 50-yard shot on him sitting on a log with a 5-year-old on my side. No blind, no tree stand, no nothing. Just this little blondie and my bow and arrow.
Sawyer, do you remember all that?
Hey, he's talking to you.
You remember all that?
Do you remember that hunt?
Yeah. And that's what it's all about right there. Making memories. That's awesome.
She says she doesn't remember sitting on the log.
Yeah.
But we were sitting in a blind when we shot the turkey.
Well, guys, hey.
She shot a couple turkeys with me too.
Oh, you wow. That's impressive, girl. Shoot, man, that's all right.
Quite a bit.
That's good. Keep it that way. That right there is once they get teenagers.
What's that?
Once they get teenagers, man, it's hard to corral them. When they that age, man, they're good.
I'm hoping I'm doing it right, like guys like you.
You're doing
a go tag this weekend together.
There you go. You're doing a great job, brother. Keep going in that same direction you're going. You got great priorities in life. And that bond right there, that hug right there that you got, baby, that's special. That's special
Yeah.
stuff.
Well, hey, man, I wish you the best of luck with the rest of your season. And to all your viewers out there, we'll be in touch. I need to get your address. I want to send you a couple things. And again, this is the first time I've ever done anything like this. I don't film my hunts. My brother says I should, but it's just not. I just don't. I've just never gotten to being comfortable being in front of a camera. But
Yeah.
I appreciate you reaching out. I appreciate this opportunity, and you got a friend in me, man.
Hey, I appreciate it, brother. Same to you. Appreciate it.